almost live from the CX Therapy Studio, CX Therapy Season 4.
Good morning, Max. You're thirsty already. How are you doing?
I'm getting my coffee, and it's morning here still. But how is Paris? How is the evening? What City of Lights and Julien? How are all those things?
Well, that's my favorite time of the year. It's warm again. We got sunlight much later. I actually need to close the shutters to be able to record without having backlight. So everything's good for me. I feel there's going to be a good session again today because I know what we're going to be talking about. And you bet those are things I've experienced more than once. So ready to talk about this. But what about you?
I'm excited because I know who we're going to be talking to, and I'm excited about that. So both ends of today are good. I'm doing great. It's sunny. It's morning here. Looks like it's going to be a good day, a gorgeous day. So I'm looking forward to it.
But before we talk about what we're going to be talking about today, maybe I can just introduce the mailbag.
Now it's time to open this week's mailbag.
Kind of hard to get myself and the bag in the camera here. But I got the bag. Let's see if there's a letter.
What have you got for us?
What have I got in there? Oh, there's a letter. I feel like the guy on Blue's Clues. I've got a letter. All right. Dear CX Therapy, I'm just going to summarize. I'm not going to read it. So this is an interesting question. Last time we talked with Shep, and Shep had a really interesting story about two people at two restaurants. And one, just to move tables together, she had to go talk to the supervisor, and the other one, he was empowered to do anything he wanted. He could shut the whole restaurant down and whatever. And this person's asking, I thought this was really interesting. But you can tell it's coming from the contact center world. How would you map that into the contact center? That sort of empowerment and helping people to actually do stuff. I don't know if you have some initial thoughts, or I could start.
Well, I do have a few thoughts. That one that probably starts with two things: training and culture. Culture is definitely a big piece here because empowerment. I mean, you can train people as much as you want. If you kind of lack the empowerment culture, you're not going to go very far. You need the entire team to believe that empowerment is key. You need to embrace having mistakes every now and then. Of course, you need to keep it under control, but there's part of the culture, and there's something around training where you actually encourage people to take risks. Something interesting that Shep said the other day was, he was actually, I was telling him that it could also just be that person. It could also be the manager that was not encouraging the person to take the lead and make the right decision. And Shep's feedback was, well, if the person is not ready to take any initiative whatsoever, it's just not going to work. So it's also about, hiring the right fit, having the right training, having the right culture. There's a mix of many things here. What's your take?
You hit a lot of it. And I think part of where there's a good example of the culture and training combining with something our friend Daniel Ord talked about, which is how many times he's a professional contact center trainer, and he talked about how many times he'll do a training at a company and nobody from management goes to the training. And it's just like, okay, so what you're saying is, yes, you value training, but not enough to actually be a part of it, not enough to be part of the team.
Lead by example.
An excellent example. And then the other thing I was thinking about that I'm kind of glad you talked about what you did, because it sets an umbrella for it, is reporting. Because you get what you measure. If it's average handle time, then there's not a lot of empowerment, because then it's, I'm just trying to get you off so I can get to the next person. If I need to do something creative for you, I'm not incented to do it. I'm disincented to do it, in fact. So I think that's another, is just, it's a subset of culture. But I think, once you decided this is what my culture is going to look like, what are you going to measure? Are you going to, can you focus on problem solved or something like that?
Which is very interesting, because that's exactly how you should be looking at marketing, for example. You set your strategy. This is your vision. This is where you're going. Then you're going to have to define the KPIs to get there. And if you get the wrong KPIs, you create the wrong behaviors, and you probably never hit your target because you're going in the wrong direction. So yeah, I'm totally aligned with you. You get what you measure, and getting the right KPIs, the right metrics, the right everything in place is probably super important as well. I would agree with that. But for today, what I'm thinking is, not that contact center is not interesting. I'm sure we're going to be talking about contact center quite extensively. But before we talk about contact center, I'd like to talk a little bit about self-service and how people can actually not talk to contact center to be able to get answers. I got a few stats for you. Willing to hear them?
Self-service is my world these days, so I'm excited.
All right. Here is a first one that I found pretty amazing. 91% of people say that they would use a knowledge base if it met their needs. But does it? And I love the way the question is phrased, because it basically states one simple thing. 91%, pretty much no one is against self-service. Everyone is happy to give it a try. But do you get what you need, or do you believe you're going to get what you need? Which is probably what the question is getting at here. How do you feel about that?
This gets me, I get a little technology excitement out of this. One of the things I've been seeing a lot of lately is really good approaches to using generative AI to make it easier to get things out of a knowledge base, either within a chatbot or just on a web page or something. One of the safer things you can do with generative AI is say, okay, here's a bunch of documents. You can only talk about these documents, and you can only say something that's from these documents. There's still tunings and things you need to do. You can still get weird stuff. And boy, your data better be good, because if it's got two conflicting things, you end up spending all this time building a bunch of rules to decide what's more important or what's more right. So this stat makes me feel good, because I think what we're going to find is a whole lot of, not that the knowledge bases are going to change, but the interface to them is going to change in such a way that makes it a lot more useful.
I was debating with myself whether I want to tell that story or not, because I'm just afraid we're going to derail it. But I love that you brought up the fact that generative AI tend to look at data and sometimes find conflicts within the data. I had that experience just the other day where I was asking about French laws. And if you've ever been in France, you know that we're good at one thing. It's having billion laws for everything and their versions of it. And I was asking a very specific question, and he gave me an answer. And then I said, but this website from the government is saying something else. And then I asked both Gemini and ChatGPT, and they looked into it again, and they both said, well, actually, this is true as well. So I was asking, so which is right? And the AI just could not tell me. They're saying both are right. You're probably going to have to pick for yourself, which is interesting to see that it can give you data, but it's not quite able to think yet and to give you the right piece of information. Talking about information, this is my second stat for you, which is a double stat. First, 66% of customers try to resolve an issue on their own before reaching out. But what's interesting here is back in 2017, the Harvard Business Review was saying that was 81%. So with your research and everything, are you seeing a drop in terms of number of people trying to resolve an issue of their own before reaching out? Because that's kind of different from what I'm seeing.
I guess it is different. There's one thing I can think of, and that is the lack of uptake that chatbots have gotten. The chatbot adoption has been growing at about half the pace of mobile app adoption. And if you think about it, if I'm going to put a mobile app on my phone, get my phone in here, and it's, I'm giving up real estate on my phone. I'm going to whatever company and saying, I like you enough, I want you on my phone with me every day. It's a high bar. So the fact that adoption of that is growing faster than something that I just run into and talk to, people aren't liking it. I hope and believe that, I believe that the reason for that is the design is bad. If I use a chatbot and it doesn't help me, I'm never using that company's again, probably. And I'm going to think twice before I use it anywhere. And when I say actually, this is based on a lot of Forrester research, really think that adoption has been hindered by poorly designed chatbots. Hopefully, we're going to start seeing some much better ones. And I still overall am surprised by that, but that's the one data point I can think that could be a contributing factor.
Well, we'll see about that, because I saw just the other day the UK is doing something interesting. There is, I can't remember the name, there is a major supermarket chain in the UK that's now rolling back technology. They are getting rid of all the automatic cashier and going back to traditional cashier system with people actually managing groceries. And the reason is just too much theft. It was just not worth it. It's probably just one brand at this point, not everyone, but there is a way sometimes where you can roll back technology. It feels like everyone is going to embrace it. And I don't know, AI seems to be the future, but we may have a few bumps on the road and a few surprises here. Which leads me to my last stat for today. 40% of customers contact a call center after they've tried self-service, which kind of different from the first one. The first one is what they're willing to do. The last one is, in 40% of cases, I've tried to fix it myself. It has not worked. So if I'm contacting you, it means I really need you to help me. Don't ask me, don't send me to another FAQ yet again. How do you feel about that last one?
And probably 60% of those people who do that are going from an IVR that said they were a successful completion of the interaction. I guess I'm of two minds. One is I'm not surprised by that. I'm disappointed by that. But actually, I guess 40% isn't that low. There's two elements to that, though. There's the person who gave up, hung up, and called again, or just started yelling agent to get to somebody. And then there's the situation where it was something where you actually needed a person, and it identified who you were, it, got the problem well done, so that when it went to the agent, we were halfway through the issue already. That's actually not a bad thing, but 40% is pretty high for that.
Well, I think we can probably now invite on stage someone who knows quite a little bit about tech in general, contact center tech specifically. Someone you've known for a long time, someone that I've known through a common friend, Stephen Lee, a few years back now. Are you ready for us to invite our guest?
Absolutely. So very honored. Oh,
perfect.
Oh.
I just don't miss a jingle.
And now, please welcome this week's guest, a true CX expert.
I was so excited to introduce Nicolas. I jumped the gun there. Nicolas was the CMO at Genesys when I was there, the contact center company. And it just always was fascinating to hear anything Nicolas had to say, and any excuse to get time with him was a treat. He's had he had a long term there at Alcatel, and then into Genesys. And then now, Nicolas, you're doing a consulting business, and I have a really important question to ask. I just kind of, to prep for this, I went through and looked at your experiences on LinkedIn, and there's a very strong shift that happened where you were living in Paris and now you're living in the Bay Area. And I just wanted to kind of talk a little about that change and why the Bay Area is the best possible place for human beings to live.
Well, that you told me that I'm going
Sorry,
to have
Nicolas.
some.
We're just gonna have to pause it because I don't know if it's just me, but you're frozen on my screen.
He's frozen for me.
So I'm just gonna pause the recording for a second.
So, Nicolas, to prep for this conversation today, I kind of went back to your LinkedIn and looked through, and I noticed a very important path in your career that I wanted to ask a little bit about. You worked in Paris for a time, and then you moved to the Bay Area. And I just wanted to talk a little about the motivation behind that and why the Bay Area is the most wonderful place to live.
Well, it's very timely with all the issues we have right now in the Bay Area, in San Francisco in particular. I promised you I would try to be provocative as much as possible during this talk. I mean, the Bay Area was and still is the mecca for technology. So it's so much fun to see market shaping up, evolving, commoditizing, being replaced. So, and the sun as well, even if it's Northern California, not Southern California, is also something enjoyable. But to your question, I still have a part of my heart in Paris. I also have two of my sons living in Paris. So
there you go.
Trying to split my life between those two wonderful cities.
Yeah. And boy, I tell you, with AI, the number of companies I talk to that are here harnessing generative is really, really interesting. So you run a consultancy now. Maybe talk a little bit about that, what you do and how that works.
Sure. So like you, I'm an industry analyst. I focus on CX, but much broader than the traditional contact center. So I've been working a lot with adjacencies, and as the contact center start to see much more integration with the rest of the enterprise. So I have a broad definition of CX, and I also specialize in sales tech, so service and technology. And one thing that makes me special is I'm not just an industry analyst, I'm also a fractional CMO, and it gives me the opportunity to help startups that are trying to disrupt this broad space characterized by everything customer engagement.
That's cool. What is there a theme you see with companies in terms of either a consistent mistake people make or a smart thing that you see people doing over and over again? Or maybe wow, here's a really smart thing somebody did, I wish more people would do it.
Oh, it's so hard to pick one. I would say back to what you were talking in the introduction, self-service versus assisted service. I think the mistake is that we hop on the next shiny object, put blinders, and try to do everything self-service. If you recall some past discussions, I wanted assisted service to mean when we bring together human and self-service. Because for me, the word assisted would best connote what is I think the ultimate goal is not to have self-service or then to flip and decide it's going to be all human, but bring the two together. The market is using assisted service when it's human-based. But anyway, one mistake I see a lot is looking at those two in isolation when I think the real solution is to bring the two together.
Amen, brother. That's something I preach all the time.
We're going to go along just fine. I have very good...
I see I have so many inquiries where it's, how do I maximize automation? How do I increase automation rates? And it's the economy's been bad. And there is an absolute correlation. I've now seen it in my job, where the worse the economy goes, the more inquiries and interest in self-service, the more people are building IVR jails or chatbot hell or whatever it may be. So yeah, that's a painful one.
Yeah, we've seen in the industry a kind of the pendulum swinging between cost reduction, growth, with stronger focus on the customer experience. My advice is consistently to try to avoid moving from one extreme to the other in a type of a bang approach, but figure out a way to bring the two together. But it's true that today the word automation comes first and often when we discuss self-service, and it shows that the focus is really to automate things, which in many cases means offload the burden on the customer. And this is where things can derail a lot. So you actually are going to ask me to spend a lot of time trying to do things, so you'd better be good at it. Otherwise, I will try and I will get even more frustrated when I'm going to call you or reach out to you. We'll discuss about the different modalities to reach out people, companies. I mean.
I love what you're saying here, because there's so many examples in the recent month, end of 2023, early 2024, of companies who've decided to go all in, really, go full AI and change strategy entirely, and regretted it pretty quickly because they didn't do it in phases, really thinking about strategy. It was a fun story about Chevrolet at the end of 2023. There was one with Air Canada at the beginning of 2024. There was one with DPD in France, or was it in the UK? I don't remember. All those companies trying to go all in with AI, which is great, but without taking the time to roll it out properly and think about their strategy, and regretted it pretty quickly, being the headline on magazines and press.
Yeah. So I forgot the name of the brand. I think it's from Sweden or Northern Europe, that announced that they were able to
Klarna.
Klarna.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very interesting because the numbers are impressive. I think they were able to reduce human service by something like they cut 700 jobs. I forgot. I think it's this order of magnitude.
Yeah.
Now, one of my good friends dug into it, and what he found is that many of the responses, because they are merchants, they are broker. So most of the answers is you need to contact the brand. So the second thing is, there was another use case, which is a lot about returns, which is a well-known use case that you can very well automate. That was, go ahead.
Oh God, I'm never going to get off this topic. Now you've got me going. The first thing is that was about 20% of the agents that they had, give or take. So how many? It doesn't take generative AI to build a self-service app that does 20% of your interactions. So to your point, a couple of really simple use cases, and that's high volume. It's not surprising they had something like that. There was nothing magic about the technology there. It was really, they just didn't have a viable solution before. What breaks my heart about that story, is I have been saying for a while that someone is going to come up with the jaw-drop generative AI for self-service app that everyone's going to go, you can do that? Whoa. And it's just that's when everybody's going to get excited and start really doing it. And I'm just worried this is the jaw drop, and it's all the negative things we've just been talking about, right? This is, you can fire 700 people. Yes.
Yeah. So I actually started my career. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, it's a shame you guys didn't share your view earlier, because I'm sure Teleperformance would have really appreciated that you voiced out earlier. Sorry, Nicolas.
No, I was about to say that I started my career in the automotive industry in robotics. And I'm not going to say when, because I'm really going to date myself. In any event, at that time, the Japanese manufacturers were completely reinventing the industry. And both European and American manufacturers were freaking concerned and started to invest massively into automations. And in particular, the Americans started to build huge machines that were brilliant. So the machine would work, when it would work beautifully. But sometimes it would go down or need to be maintained. And before and after, it was a complete mess. Now, I had the opportunity to tour a number of manufacturing facilities in Japan. And everybody thought that the Japanese were masters of automation. But they had a different philosophy where automation was a support of the people. Completely different. I think it was so powerful to me that I have this approach ingrained whenever I see automation. There's a way where you can look at automation and you can put brilliant engineers, they're gonna get something. And there's a way where you look at automation in support of what you do with human, and actually it works much more often, way, way better.
Adoption is better as well. Well, since we're talking automation and customer service and all of that, I have one quick question for the both of you. What do you believe is the percentage of people today who would rather have no self-service at all than bad self-service?
100.
It's okay. I need to have a different point of view. I think everybody wants self-service. I think we are in a world where you want to be able to do things by yourself. So now you have to be ready to pay the price. That's my way of tweaking your question. So what you see now is a lot of customers actually dropping after a poor self-service experience. So
we had some great numbers on that with Shep Hyken the other week, sharing the exact same thing that you were saying here. The actual number I got, which is a 2023 study, is 50%. It was impressive how it was really half-half. 50% of customers saying that they would prefer no self-service option if it's going to be a bad experience, which kind of tells you people are keen to do self-service, but you're going to have to do it right. And there is a reason why I've picked that specific image, because we also had that chat with Shep last time, who had that very painful experience in an airport. But probably enough with statistics. I think now it is really time for us to go through the...
Gather around, folks. It's time for Guest CX Story.
Perfect. Welcome back. Nicolas, I believe you have a story for us, and we're all ears.
Okay, I do. And my story is with a large bank. I think, so I will have to shorten it because it was very long. It's not completely resolved. And basically, I was trying to understand how I'm set up in their system. So it started because actually one of my sons, and we all have dual citizenship. So sometimes you have complexities when your life is actually split across multiple countries. But one of his accounts was closed. No notice, no way to revert, no explanation. So I didn't exactly know at the beginning. I thought it was something with him living abroad. But then I got suspicious. So that's the time, and I wanted to verify how I'm set up because we happen to use the same bank. So that's the type of question where you want very precise answers. So my initial step was to go to the bank website to email. And why did I turn to email is simply it's a complex situation. So I could write everything. And then email also provides back an answer in writing. So you have a precise answer. Anyway, so I went on the website, no more email. So then I went on the mobile app. No email, no message. Okay, I revert to calling. But already back to what we were discussing with self-service, my self-service experience just started. I didn't do a thing. I was just looking for the best way to get my job done. So I called, and of course I was greeted with an IVR asking me to say in a few words what my call was about. And I scratched my head. I knew I should have prepared myself because we always have the same question. In a few words, please tell us what you're calling about. So I was figuring out, then I said, I want to talk to an agent. And of course, immediately after you say that, they say, okay, but yes, in a few words, can you tell me what this is about? Anyway, I ended up getting to directed to someone. And I understand with compliance in financial institution, which is a big issue in defense to them, you need to direct you to someone that has the credential, the certification, the clearance, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, I get to a first agent, and then I get steered through a set of canned questions. So since I know a thing or two about the industry, the guy was scripted, and there's no gender relationship to that. It gets very frustrating because you know what you're asking for. And you feel that these questions are taking tons of turns. Anyway, and I ended up, of course, to figure out that the person didn't have the qualification, which I kind of expected. So I wanted a concierge to be able to direct me. Then I got transferred to someone else, and I explained my situation. I get some kind of answers. But that's the type of answers where you always feel, I'm not sure this is the question I ask and whether I got the answer I need. So anyway, and one of the reasons why you reach out to people is because you want to get confirmation. The problem with self-service is what exactly you said. There's so many things that you can read something and the opposite. Anyway, so I decided to go to the branch. Wonderful experience booking my appointment with the branch. Pretty straightforward. I walk into the branch and finally have someone that talks to me in English. I feel I had a human, not scripted. So he understood my question, but of course he needed to make a couple of calls. So he started to call. He addressed 80%. And I had 20% to be confirmed. So at the end, he gave me his business card. They also do now, they print something. Can you believe it? They print a summary of why you came in the bank today in a very formal language, what you've accomplished with whom. Anyway, so he gave me his business card. And on the business cards, I saw an email. So I started to get very excited. And then he started to get into very long explanation. Yes, I have an email. And at the end, because we started to build a relationship, explain me, we have so many steps because of compliance to respond to an email. We will never respond to your email. So think about it. Very large bank. If I write an email, I won't have any answer. That is completely crazy. So the way we ended up communicating is via his mobile phone. So I'm living in voicemail. Sometimes he calls me back. Sometimes I need to reschedule an appointment. So this has been going on for 6 months. I don't have, time is the currency. I think some of your fellow analysts came up with this expression that I really like and I embrace. So the reality, if it has been so long, is because it's not necessarily urgent. I just want to make sure I'm properly set up with that bank and have a gazillion set of things to do. But boy, what an experience. And on one hand, you have tons of technologies, and on the other, something simple became extremely complicated. And you think about automation, but I can point in this process so many areas where we could have done things way shorter without automation, but a little bit of common sense. So over to you.
Wow, there are tons of things to unpack here, starting with I feel the frustration, share it. Doesn't sound like a fun experience. Max, do you want to start or should I go first?
Why don't you go first?
Why don't I go first? All right. Well, tons of things to unpack. I should have prepared pen and notes here to take notes. But all right, starting with the first, the obvious one. If you can only use email to ask very high-level generic question, make it clear on your website that you're only going to answer very high-level generic questions. Don't let people get sucked into a process where they have to provide tons of information, they never get an answer, it doesn't work. Second thing, if your compliance is so important to you, make sure that you can still do business within the guidelines of the compliance, because if not, you end up having your account managers using their personal phones, which I'm pretty sure is not compliant to start with.
Right. That was what struck me there is the rules ended up with infinitely less secure communications as a result.
Exactly. That is so bad. That is just poor thinking. The other thing that I'm used to with banks is usually they have me identify myself, jumping through hoops, answering questions, sometimes even giving codes or whatever, talking to a machine for a while to identify myself, until at the end my question is generic enough that I really didn't need to identify myself. Just let's talk as humans first, and if really I need to be identified, then we'll jump through that hoop. And ultimately, I mean, just not having a clear channel explanation, having to be transferred from one person to the other, going through the IVR, talking to an agent, being transferred to another one, all of that generates frustration, increases the burden on the customer service team. They're probably not happy about that either. So it's really a lose-lose situation for you, for the company, for the agent. It's pretty bad experience you've had there. Max.
There are two things I want to jump on. Poor Nicolas, he's going to have 6 hours of responses to all our ramblings. One, it struck me so hard that you felt like you needed to prepare to talk to an IVR. I mean, oh my goodness, how broken is that would ever enter your mind? And then I was thinking about it. So you had a question that the person you went to couldn't answer, and then the person they sent you to couldn't answer, and somehow you're supposed to figure out how to ask for that in the IVR. I mean, you were very much in all I can do is yell agent mode.
And you and I discussed it. It's true that sometime in the IVR I'm starting to swear in French to get out of the self-service. Yeah. In all fairness, what was tough, I didn't know exactly how to ask the question. I don't know how the system and compliance is managed in the bank.
And you should.
I understand. So that was part of the issue. So the way I look at it, and I look at it with my CX analyst eyes, I think first you need to guide people to steer to the right channel based on the job to be done. What you have is on the mobile, everywhere you have different things and you search. Search is usually handled separately, but the reality is most people search on the web to figure out what will be the next steps. So there, you have the opportunity to steer people to the best channel to get the job done. I don't know how big of an issue with compliance, but in a synchronous text channel that lets you say something, it's hard to crystallize in one sentence, right. And you want stickiness. It looks really a must for any complex query. And you want to have this so that every time you transfer, you have that kind of transcript carried over.
Yeah.
I think the issue with the self-service, it ties to everybody trying to automate. They are over obsessed with automation. So they try to steer you to automation with all kind of confirmation. There's something that needs to be changed, and simply accept with a time sequence, okay, I overflow, instead of increasing my frustration, because not only I have to find a way to crystallize my request, but after I've done it, I'm going to be replayed it to confirm it. And the last topic that you and I have discussed is scripted agent. I think we are past that point. You cannot whine on having 30% turnover with agent and treat the customer service population with very rigid scripted way. There's tons of different ways to do it. And the reason why we end up dealing with human is because we're stuck,
Right.
or because we want to get confirmation. This is really where script gets in the way. And you can check compliance with checklists. There's tons of different ways to handle some of the needs that become a script, that are behind script. And there's a situation where, for example, for insurance, there's a proper way to collect a few questions. So you can have a few script, but this notion of scripting the experience, I think, needs to be eradicated.
Yeah, I couple. Boy, so many thoughts. I'll try to boil it down to a couple. I do know of a large bank that totally threw away scripts and actually trained all of their agents intensively, and then did a whole year of follow-up and focus on how to speak and just words to use and taking ownership. And so it was really interesting situation. So that is one exciting example of somebody who got that, which, one out of however many. I wanted to ask you a little bit more on the compliance stuff. I'm even going to say, because I'm going to kind of say nice things about them. I have Fidelity, and I have a broker that I work with, and there's actually a team there, and they won't do anything in email, or they will. They'll say, "Hi, how are you?" But there's a messaging app, and that, they like that because they can encrypt that. But that's not really that doesn't protect them from saying something inappropriate. But what I find is the way they've set that up, I can get that they are able to, I'm sending it to a team, and for most things, someone can answer and have the right authority and be trusted to answer it in a way that is compliant. And it sounds like this was just so different than that.
Yeah. So I don't think email is the panacea. And I candidly don't know all the complexity of compliance. I'm acknowledging, because I deal with enough banks on the CX side to appreciate the pain. We do need a text channel to be able to capture with precision something that doesn't go in a couple of sentences and that needs to be captured. So go figure it out.
Max, earlier, can't remember at what time you talked about this, Max, but today you were talking about the fact that some brands manage to get on your phone, right? Manage to get their app on your phone. And that was worth a lot of money because you have to be selective. You don't put all apps there. I actually find it very frustrating because some services for which I would love to have an app, they don't provide, and many others for which I don't care about the apps keep pushing it my way. But different topic. But what I'm getting to here is I actually love banks that offer an app with a proper messaging mechanism. The reason for this is you kind of skip the line. You don't need to authenticate yourself anymore because you have the app, you're already logged in and everything. So all that part is skipped. You can talk directly to the right people. They know your account. They're connected. The thing that's missing is two things, in my opinion. First is, are they doing it well? Because it is some kind of messaging, so you can't wait for 2 weeks. This is fast asynchronous. You have expectation, which are different from email. But the thing is the messaging has, what's lacking between messaging and email is exactly what Nicolas was saying earlier. I have a very complex issue. I don't know how to address it. I'm going to write a long email, which in messaging on your phone is not that convenient. So there's probably still something that needs to happen, either messaging on their website to replace email altogether if that's what they want to do. But they need to find a way to cater for every situation. And that's why we have so many digital channels nowadays, because there is not one that's better than the others. If I'm in the metro, or if I'm lining up for buying groceries, or if I'm in my office or sitting on my couch, I have different needs. If my problem is simple or my problem is complex, the context does matter. And therefore, there should be a breadth of various channels that the customer should be able to pick from based on his own personal situation, and all should be working in compliance so that the customer can get the answer they need.
Yeah. So two things. On the convenience of email is really because you can have a keyboard and you can structure your thoughts, which is harder on your mobile with a messaging app. What I'm finding is with dictation, you can actually speak a couple of sentences. It's captured very well despite my accent. Then you can edit. So I found that messaging is working much, much better in the context of a modern cell phone. So that's point number one. Point number two, what is true with chat, it's being plagued by what happened in the beginning. No response and terrible robots, chatbots responding. So the challenge when you set it up is you've got to manage the expectation on the response. I think it's okay if it's a few minutes. There's a kind of an optimization because some of those applications, they basically log you out immediately after a few minutes. So there's a timing to figure out. But if you if you properly set the expectations, and if you're very clear on a bot versus human, and if you know to make way to the person, because in many cases the bot is here because we don't have anyone, and the bot is here to kind of occupy, if I may use this term, the channel, which is the worst situation. So those two historical issues needs to be addressed in both the experience design and the way you set in the moment the expectation to the customer.
That's a great, I think it's a great final point. And I'm going to put a hopeful spin on that. Is I think with generative, there's kind of some buzz and excitement. We're all, people who play with ChatGPT are like, oh, this is pretty cool. So hopefully we're at a moment where if brands do start doing something, people may try it again because they've kind of got a little, the ones who just had such a bad experience, they're never going to do it again. There might be a window opening where they'll play with it again. So hopefully it's a chance to actually open into that. We shall see. Oh man, this was great. I just had a lot of fun. I really appreciate it.
That's the first time we have a guest who's in the same city with you, Max. So hope you enjoy the proximity.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Nicolas. Do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share with the audience?
Well, thanks for having me. And wow, I feel much better talking through it.
That's what we're going.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Nicolas, and hope to talk to you again very soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Hey, Max. So, great episode. Fantastic guest. Thank you for inviting Nicolas. How do you feel now?
I feel great. That was fun. I got to purge a couple of my frustrations, and I thought we hit a lot of fun and interesting things.
Well, I felt he was telling my story. I've been
Yeah, you've had your share.
so many times what he's going through now is so frustrating. And I don't know if you've noticed, but he was kind of saying this is not a finished story quite yet. So we might actually have a follow-up at some point.
Yeah. This is a story of months, unfortunately. So, all right. Well, please, folks, if you like this and it sparked some thoughts, you can go to the CX Therapy on LinkedIn and send us a note there, or just reach out to Julien or myself directly and let us get the question, and maybe you'll hear it next month.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you very much, Max, Nicolas, everyone who's watching, and see you guys in a month's time.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.